Your journey can only begin when the self-doubts stop. The first step is harnessing your bravery within. Believing in you is your host, John Williams.
Hello and good day to you all. My name is Sean, and I'd like to thank you very much for tuning into another Hodge episode of Bravery Within. I wanted to take just a second to say thank you so very much for tuning into my podcast. We continue to grow. That's all thanks to you guys out there, my extended family, my loyal extended family, to be honest. You guys are amazing. You guys keep talking about the podcast. You keep sharing it. You keep commenting on it. You keep sending me dad jokes of the days. It's fantastic. I love hearing from you guys. You really make my day when you get a hold of me. Today's episode, I'm not gonna pull any punches on this one here. This one hit real close to home. Of course, I went through it, and this episode actually was submitted to me and asked if I would talk about everything that I went through and what my family went through for this subject. And today, the Hodgepodge episode number 11 is actually titled "Broken Homes." This one here, when I was actually writing up my notes and stuff there and what I wanted to talk about to make sure that I really didn't forget anything, and what I'd come to find out actually was I, like a typical man, I processed some of it, but I didn't process it all. I just basically locked it away in a box inside of me, and I just pushed it off to the side, and I just didn't worry about it anymore. So by actually writing up my notes and stuff there for this episode, it actually really dug up some emotions. It really dug up some feelings that I thought I'd put in the past and not worried about anymore. But after going through this here and stuff, it shocked me at how much that it actually still hurts for the decision that I made about getting a divorce. But this episode was asked by Alex and stuff there. He had talked to me about and stuff, and he thought it would be a good thing to talk about. I'm not 100% certain why he wants me to, but you know what? I'm going to honor him. He's my son, and he's my manager, so I have to do what the boss says. And so there's going to be some of this here. If you hear me stammer and stutter a little bit, I deeply apologize as I'm going through this podcast. But this really actually brought up a lot of, rough emotions. I mean, more bad ones than good, of course, because it was a divorce. But so today's all about the good, the bad, and the ugly of a broken home. I know there are plenty of folks out there that came from broken homes. Don't get me wrong with that. But one thing that I want you to know that it took me a while to learn myself is it doesn't have to define who you are. You can make your own path from a broken home, from a divorce, and everything like that there, and learn from the mistakes of the past. That's probably the most important thing that you could probably take away from this podcast today is learning from the mistakes and then rewriting your future and stuff there, so that way it works out the way you want it to. Of course, not everything is going to be the way you want to. If it was, I'd be living in New England in some fancy rustic cabin that's up in the middle of the mountains, and you'd have to use a helicopter to fly in to see me, but unfortunately, I ain't rich, so I can't pull that one off. But you know what I mean, where I'm going with that. So all I can do is I'm hoping that I can make things a little bit easier on not just the children. I mean, the children go through a lot, and they're not asked to go through this. We don't ask them there when we get a divorce and stuff there. It's basically the parents' decision. So they're just caught in the middle, unfortunately. But there's also stuff that the parents have to know that they're going through for processing a divorce. It took me a long time to get past mine. I'm not going to lie about that. There was a lot of feelings. I mean, I never intended to get a divorce, so this really blew my mind when I had to make this decision, and I'll explain why I did those decisions. But the first thing that I really want to make clear before I get too far into this episode is mistakes were made on both sides of the marriage and stuff there, and I gave everything I had for 17 years to try to make it to work. They just didn't. No matter what I did, it just didn't. No matter what we tried, it didn't work. So I am not in any way, I want to make this very clear, I am not blaming my ex-wife, and I have accepted the consequences of my decision to get a divorce, and I have done everything I can to make the best of it. I am not going to throw her under the bus in any way, shape, or form, so please don't take it that way. So if you hear me, I'm trying not to skew anything, any of the facts to fit me or fit us, or I'm not the good one. There was mistakes made on both sides. I just want that made very, very clear. And everything else that worked out after it, that basically I can't control that. So I'll throw myself under the bus before I even get started. I am not going to throw my ex under the bus. I just want that made clear. This is not going to be tear down, my son's mom. That's the last thing that I absolutely want to do. And I haven't done it to this point, and we've been divorced now 13 years. I'm not going to start now. So I just wanted you guys to know that, if you think that's what I'm going to do with this whole podcast, nothing could be further from the truth. If anything, everything's going to come onto my shoulders, just kind of like how I did the divorce and everything else. And we're going to proceed with the podcast that way. So basically, to let you know, yes, Alex is the one that asked me to do this episode, which kind of actually shocked me, to be honest, and stuff there. But he's an exceptionally bright kid. I'm so lucky to have him as my son, and he's went through this. So I'm going to be saying some things that I know that he went through. Maybe someday I'll get lucky, and I'll bring him onto the podcast when he's ready to go. He hasn't really wanted to jump on yet. But what I can do is I'm hoping at some point he will actually come to the table, and we'll have like a Broken Homes episode 2. And what I would like him to do is step up and basically just tell you from his point of view, even if it throws me under the bus. I'm not worried about that. I want him to tell you guys his point of view because he's a kid that went through it. And I know there's plenty of kids that are going through this. They have gone through this, especially since most of the divorce, 50% of the divorces don't work out anymore. That's a staggering and terrifying number. So there's a lot of hurt that's out there. What I'm hoping to do is, get through this, and maybe I can help with that hurt a little bit. Maybe I can make things a little bit easier. So just letting you know, here we go. When I got married, I'll be honest, I truly believed in the words, for better or for worse, until death do us part. I took those so close to heart. I knew that I was making a commitment to my ex-wife, my son, my family, and my God by going in and getting married. I understood that there are ramifications spiritually for, getting married and then ultimately getting divorced. I can't stop those. I'm not to that point yet. All I can hope is someday I can right enough wrongs so I don't go downstairs and roast marshmallows in the heat for the rest of my life. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But due to circumstances and some beyond my control, the marriage just didn't work out. I'm not going to go into a lot of reasons. I'm not going to do a whole lot there. I'm going to try to say what the reasons were from my son's point of view and then just leave it at that. If I get too far into this and you do have questions and you want to know more, email me and then we can talk about it that way. But my thought was after I got the divorce, after I made the initial decision saying it's done, I can't be part of this anymore, I need to look out for my son, it's still to this day, like I said, it was 13 years ago, almost 14, and it still hurts. And I feel like such a failure still going after the divorce. Now, I know it's not all my fault, but I still made enough mistakes on my own. I messed up, and I know that. The only thing I can do, so I'm guessing that's probably why it was so hard for me to process, is to let go of a relationship after you've worked so hard at it. It broke my heart. There's no doubt about it. I don't know if it showed or not there, because when you go through that, typically when a couple goes through that, there's more anger than anything else as you're getting through it, which is a sad part because the kids get caught in the middle. So what I want to do is I'm going to break this podcast up into 2 sections. The first one is going to be the kids' side of the divorce. I'm going to do my very best there to see if I can help the little ones and stuff there, the teenagers, anybody going through that when you're trying to process this stuff. Even if you're an adult, 20s or 30s or 40s, you might be thinking, okay, there's going to be things in here I'm hoping that will help you and maybe allow you to process it a little bit more. And then the second one is going to be for the adults of the divorce and stuff, because you're going through a lot of trauma, a lot of hurt, everything just as much as either, but most of the time because the parents initiated the divorce, they don't get a lot of help. They don't get a lot of therapy. They don't, they just pretty much, just everything for our kids to protect them and do the best we can for them. So I broke this up into 2 sections. So the first one is the kids' side of the divorce. As I look back on what my son and I went through due to the divorce, to me, it is extremely heartbreaking. I did everything in my power to shield him from the negative effects from the divorce. I made sure that I wasn't yelling. I made sure I wasn't throwing things. I wasn't mad at his mom or anything like that one there. Because when you break it down, and adults, you got to listen to this one, not the kids, but the adults. just know that your kids, whether their kids, you're divorcing their mom or you're divorcing their dad, no matter what, that parent is always going to be there. So trash talking those parents that you're divorcing and stuff there, the people there, is not the best thing. And I wanted to make sure that I never did that. And I still, to this day, I don't trash talk. I do everything in my power not to, because that's always going to be his mom, and that's just, I can't change that, and that's what it is. And I'm not saying she's a bad mom in any way, shape, or form. All I'm saying is we have to keep a mutual agreement stuff there and keep it calm, keep it nice, so that way I want my son to feel comfortable no matter who he's talking to, and he doesn't have to worry about what he says, because he had a lot of feelings, and I think he still does. It's all bottled up, and he slowly talks to me about stuff, which is fantastic, and I've always got time for him. And some of it was rough. I mean, he just flat out told me what he felt, and I was happy for it. Granted, he took he said a lot of stuff there, and some of it was against me, and that's fine. That's your feelings. There's nothing you can change about that. And I think it's fantastic that he actually felt comfortable enough to talk to me about this stuff. And he still, to this day, will talk to me. And I'm deeply honored because of, all the headaches and the hurt and the changes and the trauma that I put him through by making one single decision about getting a divorce. So he's been incredibly strong. I'm not worthy of a kid like him, but I'm so glad that I do have him. So some of the reasons that I had to make the hardest decision of my life. These are my reasons. It doesn't mean it's the right reasons, and it doesn't mean there's always more. But these are the big ones that I did, and I made my decision based on some of these decisions. My son's attitude was spiraling downwards at a very bad rate. He was fantastic in school. I mean, he was amazing, but I was noticing that he was having more anger. He was being more closed off. He wasn't really being himself. I noticed he was having more problems at school. So that was one reason I had to weigh that in. The other one, his grades were dropping like a lead balloon. He was virtually a straight A student. I mean, I think he was at like a 3.7 or something like that. I mean, it was incredible, his GPA, and then he blew the top off of it as he graduated. But that was one reason that I had to really pay attention, was because his grades were dropping, and I had to look for his future in case he wanted to go into college at the time, and he was talking about going into the military at the time. But I needed to make sure that I protected that, so that way I give him the best platform to jump off from. So that was another reason I did. His health was taking quite a hit. This was probably the biggest reason that I made the decision. We took him to the doctor, and he had high blood pressure. He's 14. He had high blood pressure, if you can believe that one there. It terrified me. It was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to fix this? So I made sure with the cooking that I took out all the salt, and I made sure that it was, prepped better. We didn't eat out as much. I made sure they didn't eat the ramen, because that stuff wasn't good for you. His vision was going bad due to his high blood pressure. I ended up having to buy him glasses so that way he could see the blackboard when he's at school. And then the next step was basically they wanted to start putting him on medication due to stress and the high blood pressure. And I thought, he's 14 years old. I didn't want to go down that road and risk his health for, putting him on medication. And then that would do more damage than good, being that he was so young. So another reason I did was his relationship with his mother was strained. I was hoping that through the divorce, things could settle down. They could start talking again. They could be a part of each other's lives. I'll be honest, that never happened. But that was one of the decisions that I did, and that breaks my heart that happened. I wish I could do anything to fix that relationship. I just don't know how to fix it. I just don't know what I can do anymore. If there was something I could do, I would do it in a second. My ex-wife and I, over the years, had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of conversations to try to fix things, to make things work, to meet in the middle, just anything to try to do it there, and we just couldn't. No matter what I did, no matter what I tried to change, she tried to change. She, stepped up. There was just something that I don't know. Maybe the marriage was doomed from the beginning. I don't know. I don't have those answers. I'm not the big guy upstairs where I can see everything and I understand everything. I'm just a lonely old man that works 40 hours a week and talks to some of the greatest people on earth through his microphone. That's all I am. There's nothing special about me, but those are the big reasons why I decided to get a divorce. And I was afraid, and Alex and I talked about this later and stuff. I mean, it was years later when we talked about it, because basically I wanted him to come to me and talk to me about his feelings, everything that he went through. I did everything I could to ensure him that none of this was his fault. Absolutely none of it. I wanted none of that on his shoulders whatsoever. He didn't make the decision. He didn't get us there. He wasn't the problem. But I had to make sure that he did not carry that guilt on his shoulders, and I never want him to. That's my decision. It's my guilt, and it's my shoulders it should be carried on. And I was afraid that if I didn't make that change, and if I didn't change quickly, I was going to lose my son. I'll be honest. He was spiraling out of control. And I was completely lost. I didn't know how to save him at this point. And I knew that if I didn't change the situation, that was my only option. Basically, is if I didn't change the situation, I was afraid I was going to lose him, and I'll never get him back. And and it was like the relationship between my father and me was horrible. I'm not going to say it any other way. Everybody thinks that he's the greatest person since, anybody that has walked the earth. I think he walked on water to some people, but between him and I, it wasn't the greatest. And I'm not trash talking him. God rest his soul. He is now resting. And I'm not going to trash talk my father in any way, shape, or form. It's just we didn't get along. I was too afraid that my son and I weren't going to get along. I stress about that literally every day. I worry about, am I going to lose my son? Am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I not going to be there enough for him? I stress about that every day. That is the first thing that's on my mind when I wake up in the morning, is I want to make sure he's there. The second thing is, okay, don't screw this up. I literally say that to myself every morning when I get up. Don't screw this up, because I don't want to lose my son, because my dad and I didn't have a relationship. So I wanted to make sure that, I protected something that is probably the most important thing in my entire life, is my relationship with my son. And by going through this divorce, I was so terrified I was going to lose him. And I honestly believed that if I would have stayed in that situation, he would have ended up in prison. He was just going down that kind of bad road. And he was way too good. He's way too smart. He's way too, kind of a guy to allow that to happen, and then to have, the jail system and everything else have to take care of him and support him. I just couldn't go through that. So I had to make the decision to get the divorce. Right or wrong, it's completely up to you. You can hate me out there. It's up to you. It doesn't matter. The decisions have been made. They're done. I've moved on. I've bared the repercussions of that decision. They weren't easy by any way, shape, or form. So one thing that, we had to do, basically, after all said and done, we had to move. And we got into our own place, and he moved with me, thank goodness. And it took only a couple months at the extreme most. His blood pressure went down. We didn't have to put him on medication. His eyes got better. His grades came back up to straight A's. He was back into all of his ROTC and basketball and all the extracurricular activities. He was back into it. He had done a 180, thank goodness. So I'm not patting myself on the back for making that change or anything like that there. Don't take it that way. I just got lucky that he responded like he did, because I know there's some kids that don't respond that way, and it breaks my heart that they don't, because it's almost like you kind of lose a soul, and you don't want to lose any of them. I wanted to be a teacher in the worst way. I spent 6 years in teacher's aid and working with kids, and I was so fortunate to work with hundreds and hundreds of kids. They're amazing. They are so strong and so incredible that they're our future, and it was so much fun working with them. So I wanted to make sure that I was there for my son, and he had everything that I could give him. Granted, it wasn't much. I mean, I was broke, I was poor. My house was super old. It needed so many repairs. I was working 2 and 3 jobs to try to put food on the table. I'm just grateful that he turned out as amazing as he has, because I know there's a lot of children out there, they don't respond that way. And during a divorce, their physical and psychological and even their intellectual well-being can be affected by the changes, by all the stress that they're going through. So I had to be really, really careful with that. But I know kids are extremely resilient. They're incredible. They are incredible little creatures. They are amazing. And I wish I wouldn't have given up on my dream to become, a teacher, because I would have loved to have spent my life, working with them and talking to them. So Some of the more commonly seen side effects and stuff there on a divorce and stuff is kind of like what I've been talking about, Alex. Poor performance in academics. Their grades can drop, their school can drop. Everything is, really, really bad. Everything drops really fast. I mean, if you pay attention to the kids and watch, like me, I could go onto the school website and I could see his grades, I could see his attendance, I could see everything there, and I knew there was a problem, so I had to make the changes. Loss of interest in social activities, bam, that was him all the way, 100%. He didn't want to do with anything, didn't want to be around anybody. He just shut down, he hid in his room, and I knew something was wrong because that was a complete opposite of who he was. Difficulty adapting to change. This he excelled at. He didn't have any difficulty, but I have had friends that have went through a divorce and their kiddos didn't do quite as well adapting because it is a monstrous change that they're being asked to make. And remember, they didn't have any choice in this. They're just having to process all this and go through the steps like what we are. So adapting to the change, you have to really watch them and do what you can to try to support them. Emotionally sensitive. I think everybody during a divorce gets emotionally sensitive. Your feelings of loss, confusion, anger, anxiety, all of that stuff, basically all the bad emotions are like amplified. And going through all that, there's stuff that you have to be so very careful. Anytime my son, and still to this day, if he needs to talk, boom, I shut off whatever I'm doing and I give him 100% attention for as long as he needs. I believe that's my job as a father. And besides, I enjoy it. I love hearing about his day and the problems and seeing if there's something that I can try to help him with. Anger and irritability, like I said, that skyrockets. But the one that gets me, and we did have to process this one here, feelings of guilt. I do know that Alex took it upon his shoulders and thinking for a little bit there that it was his fault, and most kids feel it that way. They think that they're the reason why their parents are divorcing, and nothing could be further from the truth. Kiddos, this isn't on your shoulders, not in any way, shape, or form. This is just between your parents. It's just something's just not working. So don't take it upon your shoulders. If you're listening to this, that's all I can say is make sure you talk to both parents, or if you have one parent that you feel more comfortable with, make sure you talk to them and just know guilt. This is not on you. There's always bigger problems. There's always more reasons behind the scenes than you know about. So don't put it on your shoulders, not in any way, shape, or form. Another one there is introduction of destructive behavior. You have to be really, really careful about that because sometimes the kids, especially the younger they are, they don't know how to process these feelings. These are about as strong as you're going to get. Emotionally wise, basically the dark emotions that come up are just they need an outlet for it. Is when you break it all down, they may not even be able to say what the problem is. They know they're feeling it, they're going through it, but sometimes then they start becoming destructive. They start breaking things, they start breaking the rules, or whatever the reason is. Just do what you can to try to talk to them and be there for them. That's sometimes you might need a counselor to help you through it a little bit, but I help my son through that there as much as I can to try to keep the stress off of him. Like I talked about, his health problems were going up so that's why I made the choice that I did. Another one there that I try to be careful because I'll never get married again. That's just never going to happen. But to some kids, loss of faith in marriage and even just being a family takes a heck of a hit on it because they think that, well, it's never going to happen again. Mom and dad, they couldn't make it work, so it's never going to happen. So you have to be really, really careful because the kiddos and stuff actually start giving up and they may not get married. Now, I'm not saying that, it's a good or bad thing about marriage. I'm not saying anything about it. What I'm saying is they may never want to get married again. And that's up to them. Hopefully they find somebody that's important enough to them where they want to spend their lives with them. That's just really what it comes down to. And building a family doesn't mean that the family has to be blood. It can be just a couple of good friends that you rely on and you do things together and you know that they'll be there for you when the chips are down. And that's really what a family is. So if you have to build your own family, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a good thing there. That way you find people that are supportive and they're going to build you up. They're going to be there for you when you need them. to me, that's a good thing. So, but you got to watch the kiddos there and stuff there and walk them through it and just see, make sure that, and I've made it very, very clear in my family and stuff there that I'm never going to get married again. So I'm hoping that doesn't, spew over onto Alex, but, with him and, his partner and stuff there, I fully support whatever they do. I'm behind him 100%. I think the world of his girlfriend, she's fantastic. I'm very lucky to have her and call her part of my family. So just, kind of keep an eye on that stuff. I mean, I know there's a lot to, for kids to handle and stuff. So some of the things, and I did a lot of these, like I said there, and I've been kind of talking about them, but I wanted to go through real quick some of the tips for helping the kiddos through the process, and then we'll be sliding into the adult side here. Just make sure, and I've never lied to my son. If he's asked me a question, I've told him 100% truth. I refuse to lie to my son, and I won't to the day that I die. So when you're sitting down with your kiddos with this, make sure that you're honest and straightforward all the way through them. Don't try to, yes, your first instinct is to protect them and to sugarcoat it, and you don't have to, bring up every little detail. You don't have to talk about all the bad stuff, but just tell them, mom and dad, we're just not going to be together anymore. We just can't get along, and we're afraid that, it's going to, destroy everything else. So we want to try to protect the relationship so that way you can still grow and have a best shot at, at your future. Reassure your children that they will always have both parents there for them as much as you absolutely can. Mom and dad will always be there for you, or dad and dad, or mom and mom, whatever the family dynamic is. But just know that they're always going to be there for you, however your family is set up. Tell them that, you'll be spending every other weekend with the other parent and stuff. And so that way the kids know what's going on. If anything, write it on a calendar and let them know that, okay, this is what's going to happen. So that way they have time to prep for it. That way they know what's coming. That way there's no surprises. That will help the healing process a little bit and help them get through this, able to process it a little bit more. Make sure you talk about the emotions. That is huge. Let them talk, let them vent, let them rant, let them, whatever it is, as long as they, of course, kiddos, you can't throw stuff around, but have a rational conversation with them. But we know there's emotions that are involved, and there's times that my son blew up at me. I didn't take it personally. That's the feelings it is. And everybody has the right to feel the way they feel. And unless you talk about them and process them, all they do is get worse. They just build up and build up and build up. And I'm the worst person to say this, but that's just the way it is. You need to talk about your emotions, and it's good. I mean, talk to your parents about that. Like I said before, tell them that the divorce is not their fault. Kids typically will take it on their shoulders. Don't let them do that. This is all the parents, and do whatever you can to support them and be there for them. One of the biggest things that I have never done, and I talked about this at the very top of the podcast, is avoid talking badly about the other parent or blaming that person, no matter if you're angry or not. That solves nothing. That absolutely, there's no good that comes out of it. Don't put them in the middle asking them for, well, why don't you find out some information? Why don't you find out some dirt on your parent? Don't put your kids in the middle like that. That is horrible. You're going to have to just get through it yourself, and I've got some tips for the adults to get through that. I never did that to my son, and I never will. Whatever he told me. That's completely, up to him. So the only other thing that they recommend and stuff there that I found that I did not do, but it was available to him, was talking to a counselor, anybody there to try to help so that he could process his emotions and work through everything, work through the hurt. I always wanted to make sure that he knew he had a safe place to go, and he still does to this day. I want to make sure that he's okay, and make sure your kiddos have the same thing. Let them know that they have a safe place. There's a safe haven. Don't trash talk the other person. Just do everything you can to protect them from the pain and the hurt and the trauma. You can't protect them from it all. Kids are incredibly brilliant. They know more than what they're leading on. So just be really, really careful with that, is all I can say to try to help the kiddos. The second part of this podcast is all about the adult side of the divorce. I know that there's not a lot of support for us adults as we're going through this. We're the bad guys, especially me. I made the decision in my family to get the divorce, so I was really hated. But that's just something that I had to deal with, because ultimately it was my son's health and life that was on the line, and that was the biggest decision and the reason I made it. But there's still support that needs to be done for the parents. You go through so much trauma, so much stress, so many changes, and then you got to try to do whatever you can to try to keep a smile on your face while keeping moving forward, maintaining a job, and then setting up the new routine. There's just so much that goes into it while trying to not disrupt the kids any more than you don't have to. That stress is overwhelming. I mean, it's a stress that I don't think I've ever had before. Trying to figure all this stuff out on the fly and as you go, it was difficult. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a man, but I still broke down and cried a couple times because it's pain. It's a change. It was like, okay, how did I fail? What did I do that was so wrong that led us to this point? And I still don't have an answer for that. That's just something that I guess I have to live with for the rest of my life. It's like, what did I do that was so wrong that the divorce went sour? But you can't live in the past, like I have talked about before. You have to move forward. You have to process it. And writing this episode up and stuff there, I did some more processing, but I probably still have more to go. But like I said before, I'm a work in progress. Sorry, guys. I'm learning about this stuff as I go too. But one thing that, if I can say anything, through the divorce, the adults also have to have a little bit of help. They have to have some support. They need as much help as what the kiddos do, but our kids come first. That's just the way it comes down to. You have to be so careful. But for the basic thing it comes down to is I needed to keep a united front with my ex-wife, so that way we could raise our son until he was 18 and further. I mean, when he gets married and stuff there, that way we're both there. You still have to keep it on a level playing field. You still have to have some, you have to keep it civil. That's really what it comes down to, and that's what I've always worked at, is trying to keep it civil, so that way he never felt out of place. He was never feeling like he was getting bounced from mom to dad and everything there. I worked very hard at that to make sure that he didn't have to make a decision about where he wanted to be. If he wanted to spend more time with her, go for it. I always encourage them trying to build the relationship and stuff there and get tighter, like I know that they could. Unfortunately, I just haven't seen it yet. That's the bad part. But I keep holding out. I keep my fingers crossed, and I keep hoping that it'll happen. So, some of the things that, basically, and I'll make it real quick here and stuff here, some of the things that I went through, so I don't know if this is something that you guys have went through or what, but like me, I lost 99% of my friends. They all abandoned me, so I ended up walking this road virtually alone. Most of my family members quit talking to me, and I had a couple that helped me, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, because I was going through a divorce, I pretty much got dropped. Had to work 2 and 3 jobs to support us, to put food on the table, to pay the bills. It was really, really interesting and really, really tough. And then, which I love this part, but on top of the 2 and 3 jobs and then taking care of the home, finding time to make sure I made all of his school activities and everything there, and making sure that he had the supplies and everything he needed for it, and then also being kind of the soccer dad, picking up kids, dropping them off. I love doing it. I only missed one thing out of all the years and stuff there. I only missed one thing, and I'm pretty proud of myself for that one there, because I wanted him to know that I'm behind him. I am always supportive of him. So I do all I can. I did all I could, basically, to protect him and make sure he was taken care of. I just never spoke ill of my ex-wife or tearing her down in front of my son. I was really, really careful about that, because that's always going to be his mom, and I don't want him to feel guilty about talking to her. I don't want him to feel guilty about being between, going, okay, I want to spend some time with dad, but then I'm going to spend some time with mom. I never wanted him to feel guilty. I wanted him, we're both parents, and we both enjoy our son. So I wanted to make sure he was completely comfortable there. And then I was battling my own depression. And then I didn't have time to process it. I didn't have time to talk to anybody about it with everything that was going on. So I kept it locked up inside, and ultimately that turned into poison, which ultimately it wasn't a good thing, but then I channeled it into my books. That's why I wrote so many books and published books and stuff. That's my way of processing the grief and the hurt and the trauma and everything else. There's so much of me wrapped up into those books as I was writing them. So I guess that's a good way. That's how I basically got out. Instead of going and talking to a counselor, I wrote books. It's probably not everybody's answer, but that's the way I was able to find to process it all. It's either that or I was going to go, let's be honest, I was going to go into the cuckoo farm and just get locked up in one of those coats where you hug yourself all day in a padded room. And I probably should have still go there, to be honest. I'm kind of crazy. I admit that one there. But that was my way of processing it all. And it took me years to get past the hurt. And, and making that decision. I still, honestly, every day I beat myself up for making that decision. And that decision was made over 13 years ago, almost 14 years ago, because I ended our family. And it just, I've been, basically single ever since. I had one girlfriend and that's it. But other than that, I've been single because I wanted to make sure that all my time is dedicated to my son and to make up for that one decision that I had to make to protect him. That's the way I see it and stuff there. But, how he sees it, I don't know, but he does talk to me about it, and he's still an incredible kid. He's still an incredible man. Something went right. I don't know where, but something went right. Excuse me. One thing that I made sure that I never used, and still to this day is always, well, that's your mother, you have to deal with her, or that's your father, you have to deal with him. I try to make sure that I never use your mother or anything like that there to say it in a derogatory way. It's always going to be his mom, and she's always going to be, there's no changing that, and I wouldn't want it changed. That's just the way it is. No matter how the relationship is, I can't change it. There would be nice that I could make things better, and I could snap my fingers and unicorns would run all over and rainbows and blah, 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 all that stuff. But unfortunately, I'm not that lucky. I don't have that option. But I just tried to be there for my son as much as I possibly could. Basically, protecting him from all that I could. I made sure that I didn't date for several years after the divorce. I wanted to make sure that he was okay. He had stuff to process. Because when you start dating, then you're introducing somebody into an already, especially if you're fresh out of the divorce, you're already inviting somebody into a very, very eggshell-like family circle, and the kids haven't had time to process, and you've got to give them time to get through that. I know you may think that the person that you're looking at is the best thing since sliced bread, but you have to be careful about that because it's not fair to the kids. You've got to give them time to move on, to process, to heal is really what it comes down to. So I made sure that I didn't date, and I guess I got so used to it, I just haven't dated because I wanted to make sure that he was always in place. I worked very, very hard to maintain our regular weekly routine. Like us, we did on Friday night. We had Friday night game nights, which has turned into our poker night now for, oh my goodness, I don't know, 15, 20 years. But I made sure that I didn't really have the money, so I tried to do the best I could. I would make him his favorite of chocolate chip pancakes and hash browns. I just couldn't afford to go out. So I always made sure that I tried to have something good for him that he liked to kind of help at the end of the week. We would play games. I know this is old, but we played Guitar Hero. That was a huge thing for us to sit there and play. I would play until I couldn't move my fingers anymore, and no matter how hard I tried, I could never beat him at the game. The kid is good. It was just like, all right, fine, whatever, you win. But we had some of the funnest times. We had a lot of laughs. We ate some good food. We spent some time. There was times that we would just end up talking. And I feel very fortunate for those times. They meant the world to me. But I maintained, we did our school Monday through Friday. You went to bed at a certain time. You got up at a certain time. The weekends there, we got stuff done around the house. Maintaining a routine is probably one of the biggest things that, for me, I found to help get through myself and to get him through it. I didn't deviate from it. On the weekends that he'd go spend it with his mom, I made sure that he was ready to go, clothes are ready, so that way it was just a nice, easy transition. That way there was no troubles. I was always there to pick him up. The nice part about it was he was starting to drive during that time, so then he could come and go as he pleased, which was nice. That really helped open up some avenues and stuff. But on those weekends and stuff, when he wasn't home, I would, make sure I would try to take care of things. So when he got back home, there might be something special for him. If I could afford it, I'd buy him a special toy or a game or, get some special food or something for him to let him know that I'm thinking of him, I miss him, and I'm here for him if he needs to talk or whatever. I did everything I could to be supportive and protect him, but I know he knows more than, really what he should, just basically because we went through so much and he processed so much. And that's why I said I've never lied to my son. He asks me a question, I flat out tell him. I don't lie to any of my family members and stuff. If they ask me a question, whether it hurts me or not, I answer it honestly. So there was just a lot there. some of the things that basically I found for the way of coping with a divorce, I did a lot of these. I didn't do them all, but there's a few ways here. So hopefully some of these will help you while getting through it. The first step is acceptance and not denial. Divorce is a hard pill that you have to swallow whether you want to or not. You just have to basically accept it, process it, and move on. Don't blame yourself for it. And here I am saying that, and what do I do every day? And I beat myself up for it. I haven't got to that part yet. And like I said, I'm a work in progress, guys. I'm not perfect either. But acceptance is a good thing. I've accepted the divorce. I just feel, I haven't moved on from the guilt of making the decision, but that's a whole different thing. Just know it's okay to grieve. You're going through something hurt. I mean, it doesn't matter how long you were together. You shared your life, you shared your goals, your experiences, your emotions, everything. You shared everything. So you're going to grieve. That's a huge loss. Give yourself time to do that. Be easy on yourself. Don't, you're going through, yes, this is a horrible thing to go through and it's a tough thing to do, but just know that, take a break and give yourself a little bit of a break. I know it's not the easiest thing to do because there's so much going on and you're so busy right now, but just be easy on yourself. Allow yourself to heal and process, and basically within time you'll be able to move on. Find somebody to talk about your feelings with. That's a huge thing. I really didn't have anybody to talk to about this, so everything got compartmentalized and locked away. But once I finally got somebody that I could talk to about it, it took a long time to, then I could start processing and then I could talk about them. It hurt, but it helped. There's no doubt about that one there. And the next thing is basically explore, do new things. That's the best thing that I can say on that one there. Do new things. You're used to doing everything one way. Now you've changed everything. So sometimes it's good to introduce something new. So if you always wanted to try, okay, I'm old. So you wanted to try bowling. I know. I'm old. I don't know what to do. I don't know what you cool kids out there do. But me, I like bowling. Or if you go rock climbing or go hiking or do something different to start the healing process yourself there. By doing something new, it gives you something new to focus on. And I found that helps out big time. For me, I started writing. I didn't know I could write. And I'm probably a crappy writer, but the people that read my books love them. I thank them for it. I mean, they're amazing people. And if they say they're good, okay, they're good. But to me, I'm always really, really hard on myself. But that's what I did, is I started writing. It helped me process my feelings, my grief, and it allowed me to move on. It helped me. It took a while, but it helped me. Basically, make sure you always take time. They recommend there to talk, listen, and reassure your children. That's one of the biggest things, and that's what I do still to this day, is to take care of my son. That's my whole life revolves around him. There's nothing else more important than that. They recommend also maintaining a routine. We talked about that. That is huge. If you're going to do anything different and try to move on, maintain a routine, keep the exact same things going if you can. That gives the children stability, and ultimately it helps you out, because it helped me out big time by staying and doing the same thing over and over and over again. So it allowed me to keep some feeling of normalcy in my life. Appreciate the positives is another one they say. Just know, basically, there was good things in my relationship. I'm not going to lie about it. So I appreciate those. And then moving on, I also appreciate some of the benefits that come out of it. Not everything's negative. It's very, very hard to see any positives when you're going through this. Not going to lie. And it doesn't have to be just a marriage. I mean, it could be just a breakup. I mean, it's very, very tough to focus on positives, but there's always positives. But try not to focus on all the negatives. Another thing that helped me out was don't make any quick decisions. That's huge. You're already processing so much with the divorce or the breakup. Don't make any rash decisions, because you could get yourself into something that you can't get yourself back out of, or it'll cost a lot of money, or you realize 6 months down the road, oh, this wasn't a good idea. Now how do I get out of it? So basically give yourself at least a year before you make any big decisions. Give yourself time to heal and allow your mind to get basically back in the right frame of mind. I didn't make any big decisions. I didn't move. I stayed where I was for 10 years because that's what it took me to be able to process and be able to move on. So And when all's said and done there, if you have to talk to somebody, talk to a professional. They know how to do it. They know how to process the emotions. They know how to take you step by step through stuff. And there's no harm, there's no shame in asking for help. None whatsoever. And I already hear my family out there just screaming at the speakers and stuff, say, yo, Sean, take your own advice. And they're right. I can't deny it in any way, shape, or form. But for me, like I said, I wrote my books. That was my therapy, and there's nothing wrong with it. Do whatever it takes here to allow yourself to get through it, and just know that, yeah, you have a lot on your plate by all the changes, taking care of the kiddos, and everything else. But really, make sure you take some time for yourself. Give yourself time to grieve and to heal, to process. That way, because if your health goes down, then you go down, and then you can't be there for anybody, and then everything just seems like insurmountable odds that are against you, and you're never ever going to get out of it. So talking to somebody, it doesn't have to always be an expert. You can talk to a friend, a pastor, family member, whatever it is, but sometimes talking to an expert actually is the best option, because they went to school, they understand all the emotions, and they understand the best course of action to help you get through it, so you can heal, process, and move on. So there's nothing wrong with that. Don't think anything less of of getting some professional help. So, and yes, I hear my family out there screaming at the or at the speakers and stuff. They're saying you should do the same thing, Sean. So whatever, I'll just continue to ignore them like I always do. But when all's said and done, it's an extremely rough road that you're going to be heading down, and what your children are going to be heading down. Do all you can to stay together and support each other through the process. Don't get mad at each other. There's going to be a lot of strong emotions. There's going to be a lot of, sometimes there's going to be yelling and screaming. Let the kids yell and scream, because that's their way of processing, because a lot of them don't understand how to process, and these are some of the strongest emotions they're ever going to go through. So give them time to process, to work through these, and just do all you can. Like I said, I made special dinners for my son. I'd buy him something nice. It wasn't much, but I'd have something surprise on his bed when he'd come home. I'd pick him up and say, okay, well, we're going to go out for supper tonight. On the rare occasion I actually had an extra $1, and then we would go do anything just to let them know that they're supported, you're there, you're going to be there for them, you're always there for them. And keep in mind for yourself too, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, guys. It took me a long time, I'm not going to lie, to get through all this, to process everything, to be there, to be a better person, to start looking at the positives like what I do now. There's a lot of negatives that are through this. This is some of the strongest emotions you're going to process as well. Give yourself time to heal, give yourself time to process, and make sure you take care of yourself. I can't stress that enough. So, but as long as you keep moving forward, you're going to be okay. Everything else will fall into place. I know it doesn't seem like it, but it will. So I hope there's something in this podcast there that you can take away, and I hope it helps a little bit. There's just so much. There's so much to process. There's so much to say in something like this, and I probably could have had a 5-hour podcast, and you guys would have been snoozing on the other side or just shut it off. But I want to try to stay in the same time restraints that I always do, and the clock on the monitor here stuff is saying, yo, Sean, you're kind of running out of time, so you better end it. So just keep your heads up, guys. I'm proud of you. I know you're going to get there. You've got this. Just know that, I'm trying to be your biggest cheerleader, your biggest supporter. I'm here for you. If you have questions, please know that you can email me at seangmorris@gmail.com. I will do everything in my power to answer them as fast as I can possibly get to them. If you feel comfortable talking to me and you have questions, I'll do my very best. I'm not going to lie to you. And if I don't know, I'm going to tell you I don't know. I don't have all the answers, guys. But I will do everything in my power to try to help you. You guys are my extended family. I love all of you. I thank you very much for listening in all the time and being a part of my podcast and now a part of my life. You guys are amazing. So just know none of you are alone out there, both kiddos and adults. This is a lot to go through. I hope there's something in this podcast that will help you. That's all I can hope for on that one there. So I'm going to end the podcast here. And looky. Oh, another dad joke of the day. Feature that. I wonder where that come from. We're going to end this on a laugh, guys. So here we go. Do you know what kind of sounds a witch's vehicle makes? Boom, boom. I know you're laughing. Go ahead and laugh. I know your eyes are rolling too. I can see it. Thanks, guys. You guys are the absolute best. Thank you for being a part of the podcast. Thanks for your questions. You guys are amazing. And as always, all my love and support